A very good morning, everyone. Welcome to the yet another enlightening session with our most respected Swami Lakshmi Narayan ji. Thank you for joining for the webinar session on the topic, Are you taking care of your family well? Learn the art of family well-being. It's my honor to introduce Swami Lakshmi Narayan ji, our host and guest speaker for today from the Vedanta Academy. Lakshmi Narayan ji is a senior disciple of Swami Parthasarathi and organizes public lectures and seminars on various topics related to the philosophy of Vedanta. For the first 40 minutes, Swamiji will share his wisdom on the topic, and the next 20 minutes have been kept for the question and answer session with the audience. If you have any questions during the presentation, please type them into the question and answer chat window at the bottom panel. And your question will be answered during the question and answer session by Swamiji. Please keep your mic on mute during the entire session. Now, over to Swamiji.
Thank you, Taruna, and good morning, everyone. So, in this second session, we will be talking on this family well-being. Now, the importance of family that we need to understand is when a child is born, only the physical body is born. And even the brain of the child is not fully developed. So, it takes approximately 5 years for the brain to grow. And then after that, only the mind starts growing and then the intellect starts developing approximately from the age of 10 or 12. That's when children begin to question everything. So the secret of life is to grow. Growth is the purpose of life, isn't it? So if a child has to grow, not just physically, but mentally and intellectually, the family becomes a very important aspect because it's the family that instills the value system and should enable the child to start thinking independently, originally. So there is a need for human beings, we being the social animals, there is a need for human beings to come together to promote each one's growth. So that's exactly the purpose of the family. So when we talk about a family well-being, firstly, we need to understand what are the foundations of a family. Every building has its foundation. It's extremely important to lay the foundation strong. Similarly, the family should also be built on strong foundation. So what are the foundations of the family? If you look at it, first, it will be humility. In fact, in the villages, if you go even today, you'll find those houses which were built many years ago will have the entrance which will be very, very small. So anyone who goes to the house will have to bend and go. You can't straight away walk in. You got to really bend and go. So it is a house that is built on bricks. And when you bend and go inside, when everybody who goes inside bends and goes, it becomes a home. Because the biggest challenge is the mind and the ego. We'll be seeing about it in the obstacles. So the mind and the ego are the two big challenges. So one of the family member could be an extremely well-read person, PhD maybe. Another person need not be that well-read. So a family consists of people who are educated, not educated, etc. But once we come into the family, we need to handle our ego. And therefore, one of the most important foundation of family is humility. So the first point I would like to emphasize is humility. If there is ego, then it will disintegrate the family. If there is humility, then it will promote the family's well-being. So not only the head of the family should live that value of humility, which spreads down the lane, and then everybody has this humility. Humility integrates the family. The well-being of the family is taken care of when the ego is handled properly. If it is not handled properly, if the humility is not there, then the family will disintegrate. That is precisely why in our old houses, the entrances were kept very small so that you have to bend and go. So that's very, very important, humility. And also another important foundation when we talk about family is love. It is not a family if this particular emotion is missing. Love is an emotion. It's a feeling of oneness. So if this love is missing, it won't be a family. So therefore, what is this love is something that we need to understand. In fact, Oliver Goldsmith, he says, and love is still an emptier sound, the modern fair ones jest. On earth unseen are only found to warm the turtle's nest. Basically, he's trying to say nobody understands what love is. So therefore he says, love is still an emptier sound. Everybody keeps saying, I love you, I love you, I love you. But what exactly is love? Nobody understands. And he says, it's the modern fair one's jest. It's a gesture. Keep on repeating, I love you, I love you. And then he says, on earth unseen are only found to warm the turtle's nest. Turtle, when it lays the egg, it digs a pit, puts the egg inside the pit, covers it up and moves away. Because for the egg, the warmth is needed. Then only the young one will come out. So love means identification, doing what is good for the other. It's a feeling of oneness. What is good for them is good for you. What is not good for them is not good for you. That identification is called love. So if you want to make sure that the family well-being is taken care of, other than humility, one another important factor that should be there is love. The opposite of that is attachment. That we will discuss in detail when we talk about the obstacles to family well-being. Now we are talking about the foundation. So first let us understand love. A lot of people misunderstand love and they understand attachment as well. Therefore, I'm again repeating, love is a feeling of oneness, which is identification. You identify with the other person, and what is good for the other person is good for you. What is not good for the other person is not good for you. So this feeling of oneness is called love. And if there is no love, then ego comes in. Or when the ego is removed, love surfaces, love increases. Because ego is sense of separateness, a feeling of separateness. I detach myself from the total. In fact, somebody talks about ego as edging God out. God means the total. Edging God out. So when I edge the total out and then focus everything upon myself, then that is ego. So humility and love are two important aspects which are the two important foundations of family well-being. Now, humility is at the level of intellect, and love is at the level of emotion. The head and heart has to combine well. There has to be a beautiful integration of the head and heart for the family well-being to be taken care of. So therefore, whenever we talk about family, we need to understand that the biggest challenge comes from the mind and the ego, and we need to handle our ego and have humility and love, identification. Then, apart from the intellect, apart from the mind, the other equipment that a human being has, which we discussed in the last class, when we talked about the human composition, body, mind, intellect, and all that. The other aspect is the body. At the body level, we need to have sacrifice, service. Our action should be in the spirit of service and sacrifice, not selfish, what I can get. The whole problem is, selfishness. So therefore, at the body level, it should be service and sacrifice. When we say service and sacrifice, it's not at the cost of oneself. When we talk about family, we are part of that family. Please understand. Family includes you and me. So how can the interest of the family be against the interest of one individual? There can be no conflict. So when we say sacrifice and service, that doesn't mean you neglect yourself. Service and sacrifice means you, the individual, align with the total. This also I spoke about in the previous session. When we talked about powerful versus powerless last week, I emphasized on this. The individual is the small circle and world is the big circle. The individual needs to align with the big circle. So here, family is a bigger circle in which the individual needs to align. So when you align, then what happens is you put the interest of the family superior to your personal interest. When I say personal interest, your personal likes and dislikes. See, in fact, in Tamil Nadu, when a bachelor boy is aimlessly living, they say, get him married. They call it as kal katti. In Tamil Nadu, they call it as kal katti. Kal means feet, legs. So, in fact, animals are also called as kal nadai. Kal nadai means that which walks on legs without thinking. Wherever the senses take them, they go. Therefore, they're called as kal nadai. Whereas a human being is called as manidan or manushya in Sanskrit. In Tamil, they call it as manidan. One who thinks and functions. Manas, manas means mind, thinking ability. So therefore here, an animal works mainly propelled by the senses. So they're called as kalnadai. Now, it has no direction. Animal has no direction, no goal. Simply lives for satisfying its one's own sense appetite. That's how an animal lives. But in the case of the animal, nature protects it, so there is no indulgence. When it's hungry, it just goes for food, eats, and that's it. But there's no indulgence, nor does it have any higher goal or higher purpose. But the moment you talk about a human being who's a thinking animal, we can say, should be driven by the intellect, a purpose. So when a person gets married, then there is another person attached to oneself. And then when he begets children, a few more people added to the family. So slowly, he or she begins to live for a larger circle. So when you begin to live for a larger circle, you align your personal ego with that larger circle, the family. So there is a purpose, there's a goal. Then you start working with a sense of purpose and direction. It starts giving you direction in life. So therefore, at the body level, it should be service and sacrifice, where you align your likes and dislikes with the family's interest, and you keep your likes and dislikes secondary. You work for the interests of the family. And there are two words in Sanskrit which we commonly use. They're called as Shreya and Priya. Shreya means good, Priya means pleasant. So when you control your personal likes and dislikes and align for the good of the family, in that your well-being is also taken care of. So your well-being is aligned with the family's well-being. Then when we come together to live as a family, then another important foundation is titiksha or endurance, putting up with inconvenience cheerfully. When you are living all by yourself, not much inconvenience. But the moment you got to share your room or anything with others, and there may be a lot more inconvenience. But learning to put up with these inconvenience cheerfully is called endurance, titiksha. So, 4 important foundations that we have put up on the board is humility, love, sacrifice, and then endurance, titiksha. These are essential for the family well-being. If you don't take care of these 4, the family will disintegrate. And then what are the obstacles that come in the way of family well-being? If you talk about obstacles, the first problem is attachment. What is attachment? The opposite of love. Love with selfishness is equal to attachment. Attachment without selfishness is equal to love. So when selfishness mixes with love, then it's attachment. I identify with my children because they are my children. I see their nose similar to my nose. I see their eyes similar to my eyes. They have come through this body. So this my and I. So the moment the I, me, mine mixes with love, it becomes attachment. If you remove this I, me, and mine, it becomes love. Simple. An attachment is deadly. In fact, Swami Ramtita says, attach you lose, detach you gain. The moment you're attached, you will lose the children, spouse, parents, friends, relatives, colleagues, and you lose the family itself. When we talk about family, it's not necessarily family at the home front. Even at the work front, we are a family. So we are MPS family, we say. So if there is attachment, my department, my group, so then it destroys the whole well-being of the organization. So this attachment is the deadliest thing. It doesn't allow us to enjoy also. It in fact destroys our productivity, enjoyment. It destroys everything. It's like poison. You even add a little bit of poison to milk, even little bit, it's enough. It will be poisonous only. So therefore, if there is attachment, it will destroy the family well-being. And what is that attachment? The opposite of love, which is love mixing with selfishness. Mine, me and mine. That's the problem. So attachment is one of the deadliest obstacles. It destroys. And then possessiveness. That's another big problem. Possessiveness. My family. I possess it. I'm the owner of it. It belongs to me. So Khalil Gibran, he beautifully says, when he talks about on his children, Khalil Gibran says, your children are not your children. They are the sons and daughters of life's longing for itself. They come through you, but not from you. Though they are with you, yet they belong not to you. You may give them your love, but not your thoughts, for they have their own thoughts. You may house their bodies, but not their souls. For their souls dwell in the house of tomorrow, which you cannot visit, not even in your dreams. You may strive to be like them, but seek not to make them like you. For life goes not backward, not tarries with yesterday. You are the bows from which your children, as living arrows, are sent forth. The archer sees the mark upon the path of the infinite, and he bends you with his might, that his arrows may go swift and far. Let your bending in the archer's hand be for gladness. For even as he loves the arrow that flies, so he loves also the bow that is stable. So Khalil Gibran says, your children are born through you. They have come into this universe through you. They are not yours. So when you say, they're my children, what in the child is yours? If you say the seed is mine, you could have not produced that seed without the food that you digested. So who's put that digestive capacity in you? If the hunger was not there, you would have not consumed that. If you did not have the capacity to digest, you could have not digested and the distribution would have not happened. The seed would have not been produced. And who produced that food? Not only the farmer, the sun, the moon, the earth. So many factors have gone in to bring you that food. So to claim the child as mine, because the seed in it is mine, it's come through me, it's ridiculous. So the moment you have attachment, you got to question it. And when you question the authenticity of it, authenticity of the claim, attachment or possessiveness, it's deadly. The moment you question, you will see that it has no meaning. It absolutely has no meaning. Now, whatever I'm talking now, if I claim everything to be mine, it's ridiculous. Even the quotation Here I'm quoting Khalil Gibran. So many people from whom I have gathered this information, and to whatever extent I have digested and presenting it to you. So to claim that this is mine is the height of madness. So possessiveness destroys. And secondly, we need to understand the members of the family, or for that matter, any being, not only human being, they are not possessions, they are not objects. See, when you have love, even when you love an object, you escalate it to the level of a being. You give it a name, isn't it? You give a name to your home. It is just a property built on bricks, but you love it so much, you give it a name. You call it Vrindavan, you call it Crescent. You give it different names because you love it. You escalate it to the level of a being. When you are not in love, instead you have attachment or lust, let us say, then you are relating with them not because you see their interest, you identify with them and relate. No, you are actually relating with them because they are catering to you in some form or the other. So it's basically the lust. And when you have lust, then what happens is even being you reduce to the level of an object. Even you look at the being as an object that is being sent in this universe for your pleasures, to make use of them for your pleasures. So when you have love, you even escalate the object to the level of a being. But when you have lust, you reduce even beings to the level of an object. And the moment you reduce anybody to the level of an object and you try to use them, what will happen? You know very well what will be the repercussions of it. Because nobody would like to be reduced to the level of an object. Isn't it? You can't address them as it. You can address them as he or she, but not as it. They're not an object. So the moment you bring in possessiveness, you reduce them to the level of an object. And that is a great obstacle in the family well-being. So even in your organization, the well-being of your organization or the MPS family is not to treat the other person as an object whom you have employed. You have to understand that he or she is a being. You got to treat them as human beings. You got to treat them with love, not with possessiveness or attachment. You're only paying for their services. You can't pay for them. No being can be bought. When a being considers himself or herself to be a commodity, then they may sell them. But strictly speaking, you cannot sell the soul. The soul is not available for sale. Never. So please understand that every being should not, any being for that matter, should not be reduced to the level of an object. So you should stop the possessiveness. The possessive attitude should go. Non-possessive attitude should come. Therefore, attachment and possessiveness. And then another danger or obstacle in relationship is rights. The opposite of that is duties. A relationship, family, organization, everything grows when the spirit of duty is there. But at the moment the spirit of rights come, my right over you, my right over this, my right over that. Simply because I brought you as parents, I can't say I have rights over my children. In fact, Thiruvalluvar in Tamil, there's a beautiful scripture called Tirukkural. In that, Thiruvalluvar says, parents are indebted to children. Because we come into this universe before our children come into this universe. Isn't it? So therefore, he says, we have an obligation to hand over this world just as we received it, if not a better world. If you can't hand over a better world to them, at least you have an obligation to hand over the world as you got it when you were born. So therefore, you have an indebtedness to your children. You have to pay them. You got this before them. But is that what we have done? We have destroyed all the natural resources, everything. We don't understand how the whole thing works. So everybody is functioning on rights. The moment you function on rights, you will destroy the family well-being. It should be based on duties. It's not based on rights. In fact, you will gain rights by fulfilling your duties, but you will never use those rights. The rights come to us as an outcome of our duties. But once a person starts functioning based on duties, he will never ever use the rights. He or she may have certain rights, but he will never use it. So attachment, possessiveness, and rights. And due to this attachment and possessiveness, another biggest problem we all come across in family well-being is pampering. It's a weakness. When you pamper each other, whether it is spouse or children, the problem is you weaken them. In fact, the way we bring up our children in the families, one is absolutely no freedom and too much of yourself on them. They have to do what you say. There's no freedom of thinking. You don't give them any freedom. So then you become too possessive, or you let loose and pamper. These are the two ways in which we bring up our children. So either this extreme or that extreme. And both has its repercussion. So when you go on pampering your children, what happens? They become vegetables. They become rebels. When you go on forcing them, they become rebels. They go on catering to them. They become useless. They become vegetables. They can't think. And they become so weak. They can't live when certain things don't come to them. When you bring them up, make them work for it and earn it, then they understand the value of it. They're able to put up a struggle. They are able to put up with the inconvenience. If you continue pampering them, you destroy their well-being. In fact, many parents, they say, I don't want to give the same kind of upbringing that I had to my children. They talk about this as a virtue, isn't it? I've gone through all the hardship. I don't want my children to go through all the hardship. That's what they think, which is a good thought. But what you need to understand is there is a lot of good things in those hardships also. Because you understood the value of it. When things are given to you, before you really understand the value of it or you work for it, you grow up not being able to take no for an answer. That's a deadly problem. That's destroying people actually, everywhere. So pampering makes a person weak. So, because everything he gets on a platter, keep on giving them, satisfying their likes and dislikes. The world is not designed to cater to one individual's likes and dislikes. So not everything is going to be provided to you all the time. So the moment things are not provided to you, which means the answer is no, you will not be able to take that answer no. That's the problem. It makes you weak. So if you want to make the family strong, the people of the family strong, you need to bring them up with higher values, not by pampering, making them rely on themselves, build self-sufficiency. These are the values that will bring up, make the family strong. In fact, children learn the values from the adults. They should rather. So even in the organizations, leaders should live those values. So the well-being of the family is a responsibility of the leader, the parents. The Bhagavad Gita, Sri Krishna says, the third chapter, Yadyat acharati shreshtaha tattat eva itara janaha. Sayat pramanam kurute lokat tat anuvartate. Whatever standard the leader sets in, that alone the followers will follow. They follow what you do, not what you say. So therefore, the responsibility of the head of the family is to live the values. So family is the atmosphere in which the children develop value and they grow properly to become a full human being where they understand life is to give, not to take. But if from childhood, if you continue pampering them, you are going to bring them up absolutely opposite. They will come up to a level where they become adults and they do not have that value of giving. They in fact think life is to take. And the moment you become a taker, the moment you think in terms of an extractor, you will be unhappy. The law is no selfish person can be happy. No unselfish person will be unhappy. That's the law. So pampering makes a person a taker. And they develop this attitude of having to take without having worked for it. Again, in the Bhagavad Gita, in the third chapter, he says, one who eats without producing is a thief. Stena eva saha. One who eats without producing is a thief. Even Prophet Muhammad says, he is best amongst us who's best in repaying. So life is to give, not to take. But the moment we bring up our children or the members of the organization with pampering, then what happens is it destroys the atmosphere. Everybody becomes a taker. Then the family well-being will be destroyed. So attachment, possessiveness, rights, and pamper. These are the obstacles. And the foundation, as we talked about, are humility, love, sacrifice, and endurance. And then Swami Ramtita says, though family is the starting point, it should not become the end point. This is the problem. We talked about attachment, if you remember. Many people, they come to the level of family and get attached there. They don't grow beyond that. See, life means growth, isn't it? You physically grow, you emotionally grow, you intellectually grow, then you finally spiritually grow. So therefore, it's not only the growth of the body, growth of emotions, the growth of thinking, the growth of the spirit in, isn't it? All has to grow. Body, mind, intellect, and the spirit. So family should contribute for it. We should not become attached and get stuck at the family level. So therefore, Swami Ramtita says, the home should be the center and not the boundary of your affection. In fact, for many of us, homes become the stumbling block. It should not be a stumbling block. It should be a stepping stone. Why home? Even country for that matter. While we need to have patriotism, but patriotism should not become a stumbling block. The others in different countries, they're also human beings. So why should I just all the time be attached only to my country? While I have an obligation towards my country, I have an obligation towards my family and my community, but why should it stop at that level? So the well-being of the family is depending upon the attitude of the family members, isn't it? And especially the attitude of the head of the family. So the head of the family should definitely not have attachment, and even attachment to the family is there. So one should continue growing. The home should just not be the center, but should be the center and not just the boundary. And therefore, what you have to do, you have to slowly escalate. So in our scriptures, they talk about Vasudeva Kutumbam. Vasudeva means God. Kutumba means family. We are all belonging to one family called Vasudeva Kutumba. So initially it starts with just me and myself, oneself. Then you come to family. When you say family, what do we mean? Children born through this body, brothers and sisters born from the same body from which I am born. So their children. So the whole thing finally is attached at the body level. Then you grow to the level of a community. From community, you should grow to the level of a country. Then from country, you grow to the level of humanity. Then from humanity, you should go to all species. Why should it stop only at the level of humanity? So this entire universe should be assumed or conceived as one family in which the Godhead or spirit or God is the head of the family. Or the same Godhead, the spirit, is that which is the unifying factor in all beings. To be able to see that unity in diversity. The form and shape and names may be different, but the self that runs in all beings is one and the same. Isn't it? So therefore, slowly, we should escalate our ability to identify with a larger self. Initially, it may just be me and mine, that's all, nothing else. Then slowly comes to family, then community. Many people stop at family, few maximum go up to community and country. Then there are rare people who come up to the level of humanity. See, when there's a beautiful movie called Invictus, when you find time, if you haven't watched it, you should watch it. It's a beautiful movie. It's on the life of Nelson Mandela. Now, when they got freedom, they wanted some of the people of South Africa, they wanted to drive away the English people. So then Nelson Mandela says, if we do that, then what would be the difference between us and them? We probably got freedom from the oppressors, but we haven't got freedom, because freedom is to rise above these limiting factors of color, caste, creed, community, sex. We need to become free from these aspects. So he beautifully, manages to bring them together. So now if you go to South Africa, you will have white people living there, blacks living there, colored people living there, Indians living there, everybody living there together as one country. And that's real freedom, isn't it? Real freedom is to grow out of all limitations. So this Vasudeva Kutumbam means we are one family. In Delhi, we are thinking we are different. Now this corona is kind of, teaching us that we are not really different. We are connected. One fellow sneezes, everybody is running because we are connected. So we should understand that end of the day, we all are human, and we being human who have more awareness than other species, we should have love and kindness towards the other species, rather than dominating and thinking that they are all created for our enjoyment only. So the moment we understand this, and slowly, we need to rise to that level. I'm not saying we should be at that level right now, but we should finally rise to that level. So Vasudeva Kutumba means seeing this entire universe as one global village, one global family, isn't it? So what is surplus in us, we can give it to the other countries. And what is surplus to them, they can give it to us. We can help each other rather than fighting with each other. So what makes the family is the right attitude. What breaks the family is the wrong attitude. So therefore, the foundation should be taken care of. Humility, love, service, sacrifice, and endurance. When you identify with somebody, even though you go through certain difficulties, you put up with those inconveniences cheerfully. Mother puts up with so much of inconvenience when she's carrying the child. Even after the child is born, she puts up with so much of inconvenience. Why? Because of that identification. So if we don't develop that ability to put up with inconvenience, then we can't remain as one family. We keep on claiming our rights, and the whole family well-being will disintegrate. So with this, I can conclude my today's session. If you have any questions, please do ask.
Thank you, Swamiji. Now we open the house for question and answer session. If you have any question, you please check.
Swamiji Prana.
Pranams.
So, as this session made a flashback on the life I have lived so far. So, one question I have for you is there are two things which we commonly hear about in the family. So, like children talk about uh, there's a generation gap. Suppose we teach them values of what you said, we need to teach them things are not easily obtained, so they need to put efforts to, and they need to honor those uh, val- value of like purchasing things so easily not obtained or not got, so they need to put some efforts or something like that. So they talk about that it's a old generation thought process, and now so this is a common question everywhere we see, and there is a peer pressure from them as well. Like in schools they see others, the friends, getting these pretty items very easily, wherein when we restrict them purchasing things or something like that, so they talk about that you're old fashioned or something. So how do we balance that? If we stop them from this uh, or try to teach them that there are the the life we have lived, so it becomes kind of a generation gap.
See, generation gap will always be there, right? You had generation gap with your parents, your children will have generation gap with you. This is okay. But your question is, you're talking with reference to that pampering point that I was talking about, isn't it? So now, you see,
Yeah.
peer pressure. When you say peer pressure, what is this peer pressure? If you have completeness within, you will not come under any pressure. Now, Mother Teresa was beautiful even without makeup. And she didn't have that lack from within that she need to make up to be beautiful, right? Because inside was full. When the inside is complete, there is no lacuna. Therefore, you don't come under pressure. So if in your family, like we discussed, there is love, there is atmosphere of love and freedom and questioning. Now, I didn't mention about this questioning that much. When you talk about family, family should encourage children to question, because at the age of 10 or 12, they start questioning. Should encourage children to question and develop their independent thinking. Now, if you have a family which has love, freedom, encourages children to question, then the children will not have that lacuna from inside. They don't come under the pressure outside. Even if they come under any pressure, they'll immediately come and discuss with you. And you, in between, every now and then, you kept saying teaching, 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 which I already said. You have to teach by living those values. So when you give love sufficiently, then their craving for products will not be there to that extent. That's my simple point. But if the love is not sufficiently given, then the craving for the products will be there. Because they then try to compensate for what they lack with those products. So the pressure comes as a trigger maybe from the other beings. You understand? In fact, people say when people become extremely stressed, they go for a shopping spree, or they go and indulge in eating. Somewhere there is a lacuna inside, so they let loose in something else. It's not because they're eating so much because they're hungry. There's a lacuna. They want, you will see in certain children, they want to be known. They want recognition. So they'll do all kinds of things. They'll probably do destructive things to draw your attention. So you are trying to reform them by punishing them and all, it won't work. But if you understand that the guy lacks something inside, and if you approach that person with love and start taking care of that inside, he will not have that need for recognition also. So my simple point is, if in your family you take care of all these points that we discussed, then the child will not come under that pressure. Even if the child comes under the pressure, the child will come, and then there will be discussion in which you can impress upon to the child that it is not that we should not have it, but these are the reasons, logic. Then the child understands, will be able to put up with the pressure. And now if you see in the world today, what is happening is, firstly, parents are not available for the children. Children are growing up with, maids at home. Children don't have the company of parents often. So they crave, they compensate for it. The parents compensate for that with giving them all the stuff. So if you give them love, if you spend time with them playing, on a daily basis, or as and when you can, then the craving for the objects will not be. This is my simple point. I remember even my son, if he gets an opportunity to play with friends, he would not want to play in the mobile, but those games in the mobile phones, because the joy that he derives when he plays with his friends is something else. So if you bring up your children, spending time with them, quality time, giving them love, giving them freedom to question and all that, then they won't come under this tremendous pressure. Is that okay?
Thank you, Swami.
Any other
Mr.
questions?
Nitin Kumar wants to ask you.
Yes, please.
Nitin?
Go ahead, Nitin.
Nitin, your mic is on mute.
Shall I take up? Hello, Swamiji.
Yes, Nitin.
No, I'm Niranjan speaking.
Niranjan, okay.
Okay, as you have precisely mentioned about giving and receiving, right? So you quoted saying that by giving you gain, and by grabbing you lose. So my question to you is, like, when we are giving something to a hungry person for food, is right?
Is it right?
But at the same time, giving money to some person who is going to purchase the drugs is not a right thing. But while giving, we don't exactly know where he is going to utilize that that money or whatever we are giving to them. So in that context, what could be the philosophy of giving? How you will correlate with this?
No, it's a good question. In fact, when we talk about giving, we don't mean giving irrationally. Irrational giving is deadly. You understand? In fact, in Tamil, they say, Patiram arindu pichai podu. Patiram means, people understand it as vessel, but Patiram also means character. Pichai means giving, begging, what you give to the beggar. Patiram arindu pichai podu means, look at the character and then give. See, in this whole universe, in this globe, if you see, some countries are worried when certain countries are developing the nuclear, they're developing to become a nuclear power, the other countries become little worried. They want them to come under certain this thing, and they want to sign the treaty agreement, this and that, because in whose hands these weapons will finally end up? Everybody's worried. Supposing it goes to a guy who's extremely selfish, egoistic, and destructive person. Every now and then he'll say, shall I switch it on? Shall I switch? Shall I press the button? Shall I press the button? Because therefore, you should find out to whom you're giving, what you're giving, to whatever extent you can. So your giving should not, see, while giving is an important factor that I talked about, but giving should not be without the intellect's participation. It should not be like that. Your intellect should direct your mind. You should, to whatever extent you can analyze and then give. In fact, a lot of people give emotionally, give out of weak pity. You understand? So you should not give out of weak pity or just emotionally. You should give with your thinking. When I say give with your thinking, I don't think whether is black, white, and then give. No, I don't mean that. I don't mean discrimination in that sense. Discriminate how it will be utilized. Therefore, we say charity ought not to be judged based on just the intention. It should also be judged based on the effect it is brought up on the giver and the taker, both. So when you give something, it should promote the growth of the receiver. Then only it's giving. If you give, but it actually destroys the taker and the giver, then it's not good. So it should promote the growth of both the giver and the taker. And that you need to discriminate, analyze, use your intellect to whatever extent you can, and then give. That's the right way to give, not just give it emotionally. That's deadly. That's dangerous rather. So to whatever extent you can find out, you find out and then.
Thank you, Swamiji.
Anyone wants to ask?
I see this on the screen, hand raised on Sarat Mohanty's screen. Does he want to ask something or what?
I've already asked, sorry.
Okay. Anybody else has any question?
So, thank you, Swamiji, for your words of wisdom and bringing in a new perspective of family wellness in various life situations. Today's session had made us realize how family wellness is crucial, not just for personal life, but also to do official duty better. Swamiji, once again, thank you for today's session. We are looking forward to another resonating session in days to come. Dear MPS employee, thank you for your active participation. We are confident that today's session will help you in your personal and professional life. We'll be sharing the details for next session in days to come. Have a great day.
Thank you.